Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us. This is the Rochester Press Box. Bill Pucko with you here, accompanied, as always, by, to my left, Tariq Spence, WDKX. How you doing, man?
Pretty good. Hanging in there just like everybody else.
Again, props to the decoration on the set. We really appreciate the effort you put in each week.
I feel if Duffy doesn't need to change, I don't need to change.
All right, Pat Duffy. How you doing, man?
Just trying to figure out what day it is. I've been getting up and getting ready to tape the show every day for the past 5 days because I can't tell what day it is anymore. But we're here. We're doing our thing.
You wearing a uniform of note?
Yeah, I got my J.P. Lossman game-worn throwback jersey on today because, if you want to talk about great first-round draft picks for the Buffalo Bills as it is draft week, you got to include J.P. Lossman in there, right?
Wasn't that Flutie's number, too?
It was Flutie's number.
7, right?
What was Flutie's up until, J.P. Lossman took it forever and owns it now.
Yeah, and it's legendary because of it, too.
Hey, we have a rather provocative first topic here. This came from a writer at WEI.com in Boston. Name is Ken Laird. His contention was, and he did a column, and his opening line was, Ted Williams went to war, Mike Trout went back to bed. His contention is that sports owes, for the greater good, every effort they can to go back and do something to create a diversion for the general public. Tariq, first impressions of such a philosophy?
Well, I know what he wants. He's a sports writer. He wants what we want. Just like fans, we want to see sports again. But for the greater good, we were all supposed to be at home. For the greater good, we're supposed to be washing our hands. For the greater good, we're supposed to be doing what we think is best for our family and our community right now. And I'm sorry. Listen, I love sports just like everybody else. But there are certain things that take precedence over it. And yes, it would be a great distraction to have an NBA Finals game. It would be a great distraction to have an NHL hockey game. There would be something to look forward to at the end of the night, and people could have something else to talk about. But that's not where we are. This is not like when Ted Williams had to go to war and we knew who the enemy was. This is a brand new, fresh enemy that has no name, that has no face, and we've never seen before. So, of course, we're going to be looking at this a little bit differently. Now, if you're asking Mike Trout to go out there and do what some of the nurses and doctors do, then I guess he's trying to help out. But this is not the same comparison as going to war.
Pat, for the sake of argument, let's assume that we could create this biosphere that they talk about. You could send everyone to Arizona, keep them in the same hotels, play at the same ballpark, and make this work so that it's relatively safe for the athletes. If you give them that, is there any point to be made here?
Okay, fine, but there's a lot of ifs and buts, and if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, I wouldn't be going to Wegmans every 2 weeks because I'm only allowed to go every 2 weeks for the pandemic. Listen, Bill, I want to see sports too. I want to see it, but this is the stupidest statement I've maybe ever heard in my entire life. Let's use the Ted Williams analogy, right? The reason Ted Williams goes off to war is because of a patriotic duty that he felt within himself, but there was also optics involved in it. Ted Williams actually was in combat. He went and he flew planes not only in World War II, but in Korea. But there were other professional athletes and celebrities who went off to war and essentially went on tours because they needed American men to step up and feel like they were making a difference. They were setting an example. And the example that should be set right now by Mike Trout or Tom Brady or Jack Eichel, whoever, is stay home. What kind of message are you sending if you start opening these things up again? And here would be my concern. Let's say you even do it within some kind of biosphere or the NFL decides to play games without fans saying it's safe. Based on what I saw countrywide earlier this week with the protest outside, the second that you have a professional sporting event, there will be people with signs in jerseys outside demanding that they get let in, knowing they're fully they're not going to get let in. But they're going to make a point to say, well, if they're able to do it, it's totally fine. And it creates this slippery slope of, well, if the players are able to play and nothing is happening, well, why can't we go back to our daily lives? And then it gets dangerous, to Tariq's point, because we still don't fully understand what is happening here. Like, it just sounds like some crotchety old guy trying to get attention for himself who cannot fully wrap his head around what is going on here, Bill.
But I didn't make that case while the governors in Florida and Georgia are opening up their states. Because they make the same argument. They said, look, if they can do it, we can create an atmosphere that's far more safe than the beach in Jacksonville. We ought to be able to do it.
And if it works, kudos to them. If we are 2-3 months from now in a better situation where the numbers have gone down, we feel that we're past it, maybe we can salvage what's left of a baseball season. But we're not there yet. We're not actually at a point where we can feel comfortable just getting out of our cars. To Duffy's point, we have to wear a mask to go into a supermarket, for crying out loud. So we're asking people to do what? Sign waivers to say, hey, I will go into a stadium. I will assume the risk and just so I can watch baseball.
Clayton Kershaw makes that statement. He doesn't want to leave his family for 4 months. And there's valid reason behind that. That isn't just, I want to lay in bed. God forbid something happens to a family member where he's locked in some biodome playing baseball. God forbid he goes. Someone gets sick. They have to send them all home. And now he's bringing something home to his family and neighbors and friends. For goodness sake, I want sports as much as the next person. But if you're going to do it at the expense of public health, it's not worth it.
Interesting topic. We are the Rochester Press Box to talk Buffalo Bills next.
Original Bay Goodman Pizza, located on the corner of North Winton at Browncroft. There are 3 ways to get the original Bay & Goodman delivery. Go to baygoodman.com.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. We're the Rochester Press Box, and we're talking Buffalo Bills right now. Look, Pat, Tim Graham had a very long column describing the whole Pegula business enterprise, and the word toxic kept coming up, and how that pushes towards, it's already kind of engulfed the Buffalo Sabres, but it's sort of pushing towards the Buffalo Bills too. How serious a threat do you think this is to what we've got going here?
Yeah, there are some very interesting things in that article. The former employees that he talks to, and I know the argument on social media being made for the Pegula defenders are that, well, of course, anybody that has lost a job or has lost coworkers at his job are going to feel negative about things. But there are several valid points raised, one of them being the front office member for the Buffalo Bills who resigned his position when he felt some of the Pegula people were being pushed upon him. I mean, it's not ideal. I mean, it's an understatement. It's not ideal. But on the other hand, this isn't something that Buffalo sports fans aren't accustomed to. I mean, listen, Ralph Wilson is a saint now, and he kept his team in Buffalo for years and years and years. But, Bill, you know as well as I do from covering that team for years that some of the same things that are being said about the Pegulas were being said about Ralph Wilson back in the day, and that was on top of the penny pinching that was going on. I hope to goodness, and Tim Graham's a great writer. I believe everything that Tim Graham says. He does his research, and the article was very fair and even, I believe, with the interview with Kim Pegula cut in there. But I hope to God that it's a bump in the road and not an aberration of what's to come with the Pegulas and these franchises.
You know, Tariq, it was the comment was made in that column that the morale, these people that are speaking on the terms of anonymity, were the morale was worse in the Buffalo Bills office than at any time since Ralph Wilson died.
Yeah, and there's some connection there with the head coach McDermott, making people that know him make comments and whatever it may be. It's spilling over to the Buffalo Bills, who right now are in a very good position to be successful. Like, this is not what you need now. Some of the issues from another franchise in your same city owned by the same family coming over and bleeding over to this moment where Bills fans, you should be extremely excited for the upcoming season. Number one, so you can't have any toxicity anywhere near that. I will give some encouragement to Bills fans. The Knicks have the same problem. Toxicity with the Knicks and Jim Dolan and the Rangers, who have seen some success. So you can split that problem if you want to. And Duffy's giving me those eyes. Like, I don't want to say your Sabres are like my Knicks, but there's some hope that your Bills won't get infected by this virus.
Well, it makes sense that the Sabres would be the one affected more than the Buffalo Bills were based on what's in this article. I mean, hockey is more interconnected when it comes to relationships, right? You see guys that play for years and they make friends, and those guys are hired as front office guys, and then you keep the Hall of Famers around. Like, it's a family atmosphere around hockey, whereas football is just whatever the hired gun is, we'll bring him in. There doesn't have to be a connection past. I mean, heck, you look at the last couple of head coaches here in Buffalo, they all had former Buffalo connections. The general manager, Jason Botterill, played in the franchise for years and years and years. Chris Taylor, the head coach with the Amherst right now, same kind of situation. I, again, hope that it's people who wanted relationships to continue within a franchise because of something that was built for years and years feeling slighted, not that there's a larger problem. But to be honest, man, I don't know.
The interconnectivity is a real problem because although the football operation in NFL makes money without even trying, the rest of the stuff in the Pegula empire is kind of suffering, and they claim that the Sabres are losing big money every year.
That's rough. I mean, it's a trickle-down effect. I just don't want it to to spill over to the Buffalo Bills, because the Sabres, theoretically, if the NHL comes back, they can go quietly into the night, reestablish, and then maybe start up for the upcoming season. I'm not saying to cancel the season. The NHL has not announced that yet, but I'm just saying that could possibly be a benefit if this season doesn't go forward. For the Bills, it's something totally different. If you get that toxicity out of the news cycle, you have a chance to win the AFC East. You have a chance to go deep into the playoffs, and maybe behind the scenes you start working on that relationship with the Sabres. But that's a lot of dirt that just came out.
Yeah, and it concerns me, too, that the Buffalo Bills window seems to be, I would have said this a year ago, relatively small here because the Jets getting better. The Dolphins have a staggering number of, draft picks that they just spent in the draft. And the Patriots are going to bounce off the bottom. This division in 1 or 2 years is going to be a free-for-all with all 4 teams contending.
What makes you think the Patriots are going to bounce off the bottom based on what's happened over the last 7 days?
Well, I'm not saying this year.
I forgot you're from Boston. That's why. I forgot.
Yeah, I'm not saying this season, but I think next season. I mean, it's safe to assume that they're going to be better than they'll be in 2020.
No one wants to bet against Belichick. That's exactly what Bill's doing right now. No one wants to bet against Belichick because they're thinking there's got to be a method to the madness. So
there's no method.
Let's play the games and see what happens.
I do try to not let that bias sneak in too, by the way, Pat. You always accuse me of that. I try not to let it happen.
You're talking to a man wearing a Bills jersey. It is fair for me to accuse you of bias as well.
All right, that's cool. Where the Rochester Press Box, like it or not, is next. Here's the Press Box trivia question, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Here's the Press Box trivia answer, brought to you by Market View Liquor, where exceptional customer service meets an extensive selection. Jefferson Road at 390. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us on the Rochester Press Box. Bill Pucko, Tariq Spence, Pat Duffy. Hey, Tariq, you saw a little bit of the Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary, ESPN. What do you think?
I can't wait to see the other 8 parts of it. I need to know exactly how deep this documentary is going to go. A lot of what came out of it was sort of who was Scottie Pippen's agent in all of this? How could Michael have been so mischievous and not allowing certain players to get money? Some of the stuff that came out of what the Bulls were like before he got there, and how much drug use they were using. This is very interesting. I don't know if they're going to go strictly on. Still clearly started with some of Scottie Pippen and some things I didn't know and some things I didn't know. But I'd like to know how much it's going to go around to Rodman, how much it goes into Jackson. Krause did not look good at this. He looked like he was sort of in his power struggle with the greatest basketball player of all time. It is a compelling piece, but Pippen is the most interesting to me.
Well, if Michael Jordan signed off on this whole thing, this all access from that season, it's just so great to have this stuff. I mean, it's not going to make Michael look bad, right, Pat?
No, he was worried about it, though.
And he doesn't look great. I mean, look, you bring up Jerry Krause. What Jerry Krause did, he's been vilified forever and ever, and he might be a villain, but he's also not here to speak for himself, which makes me feel kind of bad. And I'll be honest with you, man, from what I've seen of the Jordan interviews, the drug use thing, which kind of made me laugh because he laughed out loud about it, but what you brought up about Pippen and the money and him wanting to delay surgery and all these things, Jordan so far does not come off looking fantastic. Bill, to your point, it was shocking that he signed off on this knowing what people were going to be thinking about him when this was all said and done.
So, Pat, well, I got you, like it or not, the whole idea of Brady and Gronkowski reuniting in Tampa.
Yeah, excuse me one sec. Hold on. All of those Patriots fans for years and years, and now they see the two greatest Patriots maybe ever leave them at the same time. So 3 things that stand out to me, non-biased Bill, who goes, all right. 1, you have 2 surefire Hall of Famers that have probably at minimum 2 years left of their careers. They chose to leave what is supposed to be the greatest coach in NFL history to go spend those years with an unproven coach, players they've never played with before. 2, it is pretty obvious in Tampa Bay, the person making the decisions is not the head coach Bruce Arians or the general manager. It's Tom Brady. Tom Brady said he wanted Rob Gronkowski, and they went out and traded a 4th-round pick to get Rob Gronkowski. 3rd thing that's very obvious, if this doesn't work, the Buccaneers are in so so much trouble. There could be NFL games without fans this year. And if they signed Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski and they didn't succeed, well, you could say we made money on tickets and merchandise and beer and parking and all of the advertising. It would have been fine. Well, without fans, unless you win a Super Bowl, you have made a terrible, terrible mistake. You can't recoup your cash, and your roster is going to be a tire fire based on the money you've spent for years to come after this. I am buckled in to watch not only Foxborough and all of you, hold on, excuse me one sec, Patriots fans in Rochester that watch the show that all of a sudden are going to start wearing some, Buccaneer stuff. But what it's going to be to see old Brady and old Gronkowski getting back together again and see if they can recapture the magic.
We are the Rochester Press Box. Unfinished Business is next.
And now to Eichel. He floated one.
Welcome back, and thanks for joining us on the Rochester Press Box. Unfinished Business. Pat Duffy.
If there's one thing I've learned without sports over the last month, it's what sports I can watch and not watch over again. And I found out I can't watch football, hockey, baseball, or basketball knowing how things are going to end. But there's one sport that I loved forever that I've gotten away from that it turns out I can rewatch, and that's boxing. I've been doing nothing but watching some of the greatest fights in the history of boxing over again. Your Haggler-Hearns, your early Tyson fights, things that got really good with no-name heavyweights from the early 80s to the late 80s. Man, I don't know how we got away from boxing being the beautiful sport that it was, because however you feel about Tyson outside of the ring, when he was in there, he was a sweet scientist. It was a chess game. It wasn't just power. It was the way he moved, the angles he threw, the sheer tenacity it took for Marvin, Hagler, and Hearns to go at it and take the concrete shots to the face that they were taking and not go down, even though the fights were only 1, 2, 3 rounds at a time. Where we are now in boxing says something about how we are as human beings, because as we pull out and have entertainment in all other kinds of places, we lost our love for what was the most dominant sport in America for 100 years. And I don't know if it's us or I don't know if it's the lack of quality fighters, but one thing's for sure. When we get back to this, I'm going to give boxing at least one more shot to see if it can recapture me.
Well, congratulations, Bruce Arians. You remember that title they like to give head coaches called genius? Well, you are on deck now. Apparently, Andy Reid's story from last year can be repeated again if Bruce Arians can just win a Super Bowl. Now, I'm just saying, just win a Super Bowl. You've got Tom Brady, who's got about how many of those? 6 and counting. Plus, you add Gronk. They're all in, just like James in Jeopardy. I wish Tampa Bay the best of luck and the ultimate rematch. How about being the new Andy Reid this upcoming NFL season if Bruce Arians can get that team to the Super Bowl? The problem is you might have to face Andy Reid and KC to do it. What a great marketing strategy for the NFL. You can only hope a guy going for his 7th championship and the kid that's supposed to be the heir apparent would meet in the Super Bowl. Hopefully that's an event we could see not only on our television screens, but maybe possibly live.
Old Dominion dropped its wrestling program. The University of Cincinnati dropped soccer recently. This is unfortunate, but those are not apocalyptic events in the sports world. My kids played sports, minor sports. My daughter was a swimmer diver. My son played soccer at Geneseo. And they benefited greatly by playing sports in college. Most kids in college don't. The vast majority of those who were athletes finish up their athletic careers while they were in high school. Syracuse is an interesting case in terms of what sports they offer and what sports they don't. In 1975, they dropped baseball in order to focus on the lacrosse program, which was one of the best in the country. They don't offer outdoor track, but their cross-country team is one of the best in the country. And RIT dropped football back in the 70s, and who misses that? Columbia won the fencing championship last year. Stephen F. Austin was the bowling champion, and good for them. It doesn't mean that every school in the country needs to offer those sports, and we aren't seriously threatened as a culture if they don't. That's Unfinished Business, and that is our program. Tariq, thanks very much, as always.
Enjoy the next part of this whole Last Dance with Michael Jordan. Hopefully they'll reveal more secrets that we'd love to hear.
Pat? Thank you, man.
Hey, Bill, what address should I send the Tampa Bay Buccaneers hat to?
I'll pass that along off here. I appreciate it. Hey, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week with the Rochester Press Box.